All right,
What's
we
up,
are
Brad?
live. Good evening, Todd. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Welcome, everybody. I'm doing great. Welcome to Westward Bees. We have a special guest tonight. We have Phillip Morse from Texas. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the Texas ag valuation. Phillip, you've been doing this for how many? Well, let's back up a little second. Tell us about yourself as a beekeeper. How long have you been keeping bees? How many do you keep? Where do you keep them?
Okay. I've been keeping bees. I guess this is year 6. I started in the dead center, July 10th of 2020. It was my COVID hobby with 2 beehives. I bought 2 colonies and all of the equipment that the guy had. He wanted out. And so I started with that, and I've grown to, I haven't counted lately, but I would say I'm right around 70 colonies right now. I'm guessing. And I've got bees in 3 locations. I guess I have some south yards down at the farm, south of Corsicana, Texas, and then I've got a couple of yards now north of the Dallas Metroplex. 2 yards that are close together in Crossroads, Texas, and 1 yard in Flower Mound, Texas.
And how many ag valuation contracts do you have?
I have 3 right now.
3 right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to go to 10, but I've got to figure out how to market myself better. Maybe some people online can help me with that.
Phillip, how long have you been in Capel?
I think 1997 or 1998, whatever that math adds up to be. A long time.
Okay.
I've been in the Dallas Metroplex since 95.
Okay. Yeah. I want to pull up a map of Texas for a second just to kind of get a good sense of it. I'm going to fumble through the technology for a second while we do this, but I'll get there eventually.
Come on, Brian. You could do it.
I know. All right. I think I'm almost there.
They should call us the techless beekeepers.
You see that now?
Yep.
All right. So can you see the heart? Can you see my cursor?
I don't know if I can.
No. Okay. All right. But can you see the hearts up in Colorado? The little marks up there, the saved places? I should just go back to StreamYard and look and see. Okay. So you can see where I am in Colorado. Those hearts in Colorado up there. Look how huge Texas is. You have all the way to the west. That's almost, I think that's farther west than where I am in Texas. You zoom into like El Paso down here. Look how far Texas juts out under New Mexico. You have like Carlsbad Caverns are right over here. And then you have El Paso all the way here. I'm pretty sure that's farther west than where I am in Colorado.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you go all the way east, that's like farther east than Kansas City over here. So the span of Texas is huge. So a lot of times we think about Phillip, where Phillip's at, and we hear him talk about his Texas experience. And then we think about someone like Jeremy, who I think is pretty close to El Paso. And we kind of put them together, but we hear totally different stories about what it's like to keep bees there. And I think part of the reason is because they're in vastly different areas in Texas. As you get to the Louisiana area, it gets much more damp and not dry. By the time you get to El Paso, you're in the desert. So I think in Texas, Phillip, feel free to add more about that Texas geography that I don't really know about too much.
Yeah, I believe Jeremy is he's a good bit east of El Paso. He is if you zoom in, he is probably almost dead center of what you'd call the state. It's funny because people over there talk about Central Texas. He's like what I call a verge of West Texas. It's considered that way because it gets a little more desert, a lot drier climate. But he is near Amarillo. So
okay,
in the north.
So that's way up. Yeah, way up here. Okay.
Not Amarillo. I'm wrong.
San
Okay.
Antonio?
No, it starts
Or
with an A.
Abilene.
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 He's near Abilene. Yes, he's near
Okay.
Abilene.
Gotcha. So
Yeah,
not so
yeah.
far.
Amarillo is way up north, but if you go due south of Abilene, you probably see Amarillo.
And then you can see where, so Dallas, Waco, Austin, you can kind of see the hill country as you zoom out. You can see that topography there
Yeah.
from Austin down to San Antonio. You're not in hill country. You're
No.
farther north than that.
Yeah, I'm in what's called the High Plains.
Now, Philip, what's great about keeping bees where you are?
I don't know. Maybe the weather. It's pretty easy to overwinter for us.
Okay.
It's not great for forage. I would say most of the honey that's brought out of Texas, it probably comes out of southeast Texas, closer to Louisiana, where they have a lot of the tallow bloom. That's kind of a Houston's a coastal area, and that whole area between Houston and New Orleans, that's all. That has a whole lot of the tallow bloom. So I would say most of the Texas honey, and then there's also some like where Jeremy is, they have a pretty good mesquite bloom out that way too. We have a little bit of mesquite in our area, but nothing like what they have out there. And it's a different type of mesquite. Our mesquite grows into pretty good sized trees if you'll let it go. It's slow growing, but they may be 30, 40 feet tall. Where Jeremy is, they may be 12, 15 feet tall the most.
So when I think about all the commercial beekeepers who are either based in Texas or go down to Texas for the winter, would you say most of them are in that southeast part of Texas that they're going to?
I would say, I don't know if I'd say most of them, but I would say that most of them don't necessarily get their honey from Texas. The big beekeepers in our area, they take their bees to California for their own, just to get the cash. And then they usually rotate either north for the apple blossoms or over to what I call the upper Midwest, the Dakotas and Michigan and all through that area to get, because there's a really good flow. I would venture to guess that most of the honey in the United States comes from that area, that Minnesota, Michigan, Dakotas, all through there. And a lot of beekeepers from Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, all have bees up there in like May through July. So I would say Texas is a good place to keep bees if you like to travel. So, but keeping bees for honey production in Texas is kind of fool's gold if you really think you're going to make it with honey production.
Which kind of leads to our topic tonight and why it was such a perfect, I think, match to have you on talking about our topic. A couple of us this year have experienced a pretty tough nectar flow and are expecting to not have a great honey production year. And as small business owners, it's wise to think about diversification and income. And living in Colorado, I was telling Todd this before we were getting started. I would say about once or twice a year, I get someone posting on one of the beekeeping Facebook pages that have moved from Texas to Colorado, wanting to know how to utilize bees to get some sort of ag valuation services. And at first, when I became a beekeeper, I was like, yeah, cool idea. How can we do that? And then you hear it's not a thing in Colorado. It's not a thing in Colorado. It's not a thing. But let me tell you, if I lived in Texas, or if this was something that was a thing in Colorado, I would definitely think about diversifying this way to be able to kind of put my income streams in different baskets for sure. So we'd love to tap into your experiences. We know you're pretty new into this part of your business venture, but we'd love to hear a little bit about how it works, what's gone well for you, what's been a challenge. Before we have you dive in, though, let's say hi to a bunch of people in the chat. I see Tom and Melissa are here. Good to see you guys. I got my VIA hat on tonight. Eric's here. Good to see you, Eric. Russell, good to see Russell. Nate's here tonight. I see Brian Coper. Good to see everybody. Mark's here tonight. West Texas equals highway hypnosis. Thank you, Mark. Dodd's here. Pastor Larry, Miss Jan. Good to see you all. Clay, the whole gang, the usual suspects. Good to see you all. Mike, good to see you. Sorry if I missed everybody. I see Todd's in here. Good to see you, Todd. Haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah.
And Philip, you just had a birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Did you do anything fun to celebrate?
I had a good steak lunch over at my mother-in-law's house Sunday, and then we had cake and ice cream, all that good stuff. So yeah.
Nice. And then actually, before you transition over to the ag valuation, you had a fun day today with a beekeeping friend. Will you spend a minute and tell us about your visitor and how that went?
Absolutely. Hold on a second. I'm getting show and tell items here.
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
There we go. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
That's it.
Hang on, let me zoom it in.
Which way is my camera? There it is.
Oh, there we go.
Nice. That's a nice label, Keith. That looks awesome.
That is pretty cool. I like that color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah.
That's great.
Keith Barnhill from Barnhill Bee Barn came down from, let me get this right. It's northeast Arkansas. He won't say Jonesboro, but it's, if he's in the chat, he'll let me know.
That's quite a drive.
But yeah, his daughter lives in Plano, which is only half-hour drive from me. So picked him up at 8 o'clock, and we went and hit all what I call my northern bee yard. Brian, when you came down and saw me out, you saw the southern bee yard.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I knew I had some help for a day, and so I just put him to work. I mean, it was hot. It was like 95 degrees, and it was. But he worked hard, and he brought me this honey. It's hot honey, and it's really good.
Oh,
nice. And you hit a couple of your what would you call them? Your management yards? What do you call them?
Actually hit all three. They're called pollinator contracts, is what we call them.
Okay.
Yeah, the term, and I think you used it earlier, is ag valuation. The term that's sort of bandied about, which is nowhere in the law, is ag exemption. Some people like to use that term.
Yeah.
But there really is no such thing as an ag exemption. It's an ag or timber valuation. So basically what it does is it takes the value of the property that's taxed on, and it takes it from what's called market value, which is how much you could sell the land for, which you can imagine around the DFW Metroplex is, hundreds of thousands of dollars per an acre. And it takes it, and you're taxed on the ag value. So how much in cattle could you or do you run on that, or how much timber is there ready for harvest, and in the case of bees is is how many bees you're keeping on the property. So literally in our area reduces people's taxes from $10,000 to $20,000 down to maybe a couple hundred. So it's a lot of money for the landowner to get the ag valuation.
And as I understand it, Texas has created this law to encourage landowners to keep using their land for agricultural purposes. Keep producing whatever you are, whether it with bees or growing tomatoes or growing whatever. It's kind of just something to encourage small landowners. But there's guidelines around it, like between 6 and 20 acres. Is that right?
Yeah, the law is between 5 and 20 acres.
Okay.
But they will, and it varies county to county. The law doesn't the law doesn't vary. It's a state law, and it's 5 to 20 acres. The county is allowed some leeway.
Okay.
Say you build a home on that five. If you build a home on 5 acres, most of the counties will say we're going to charge you full tax value on one of those 5 acres.
Yeah, for the house. The house gets that 1 acre. The rest is ag use.
Which essentially drops you below the threshold that you need to maintain that exemption. So if you're shopping for property, don't buy 5 acres, buy 6 acres, because if you ever build a home on it, you're going to lose your ag valuation for that.
So what if I have 25 acres?
Yeah, if you have 25 acres, I believe, now I'm not 100% sure, but you probably could take an ag valuation on 20 of those 25, but not the additional 5.
Okay.
Now, if you keep cows on that land, you can take I don't think there's any cap on the number of acres. I believe probably the law was, when it was passed, it took, as anything does, it took a heck of a lot of lobbying. Fortunately, we had enough beekeepers in Texas that got behind it. And got it passed. But I'm sure they ran it up against some of the big cattle farmers in Texas saying, hey, we'll let you have a small slice of the pie, but we're not going to let you use these for 500 acres.
So you're saying that this is a law that came about in Texas through a grassroots movement of Texas beekeepers?
That's my understanding. It happened right about the time I got involved, or maybe a few years before.
Okay. As you started looking into this, where did you go for resources?
Like everybody else does, mostly Google. There are quite a few. There's some Texas A&M, which is sort of the home base for the state's the lawmakers and the Texas Beekeepers Association and all the state inspections. All that's based out of Texas A&M. They do a pretty good job with their websites of interpreting the law, and also they maintain I wish I had the link, but they maintain a website which you can go in and click on your county and see what your county allows and doesn't allow related to the law. So
what a great resource that is.
Yeah. So because I have bees in I think 2 different counties, or they may both be in Denton County. I don't know. But I have the possibility of keeping bees in about 5 or 6 different counties. That are, say, if I kept them down at my farm. Now, my personal property that I own does have an ag valuation, but it doesn't. It's based on cattle. It's not based on bees. It's too large to count for the bees.
But you can't double dip. You can't do cattle and bees.
Well, you could. Sure, you could. Yeah, when you go down to apply for your ag valuation, like when I bought the property, I literally went and sat down with someone at the tax assessor's office, and they just question you: how many cows are going to be on the property, how much timber value is there, and they just start you off from that. Now they'll send surveys out from time to time to update that information. But if I said, okay, I'm going to keep 15 cows and 20 beehives on my property, I'm going to be paying a little bit of tax on those beehives that I keep on my property, because that's where they establish the tax you pay is based on the agricultural crop that it supports. So sure, I don't have, for purposes of, those bees are my personal property for my land. They don't count towards my ag valuation. Now, I will tell you this, I have considered replatting my land so that I have multiple lots that are below 20 acres.
Yeah.
Just so I could put the bees on there and have them count.
Yeah.
I don't know for certain, but I think that area that I have my farm is, that I think the tax assessor there is a little less bee friendly than most areas. I don't think there's, but that's it's not really fair for me to say that, but I don't know of other people that use bees for that valuation
Okay.
in my area. So it might be a
there's
little
also
pushback.
there's like for the landowner, there's like a 5-year waiting period or 5 years where you have to be utilizing that land before this kicks in. Is that correct? And
That
talk
is
about that part.
that is correct. That you have to establish that you used the property for that purpose 5 out of the last 7 years.
Okay.
So if you can have a gap in there as long as it's not more than 2 years, and that's the main reason for that is for things like if you're keeping cows, you might have a period where you have to rebuild your fences, or something has to happen where you had to suspend the use for a little while. But
so how do you provide that documentation to your 3 clients?
I have a contract on every property that I do. So they have a written contract with a date of when it started, when I brought the bees on there.
Okay.
It's up to them to talk to the tax assessor and see exactly what they're expecting. Usually what they want is they'd like to see a contract or a lease or something like that. And they would also like to see some pictures of the beehives installed. That's typically all they require. I guess they have rights to come out and check to make sure there's live bees there, but I've not heard of that happening very much. And that probably varies by somewhere.
Do you have state inspectors in Texas?
We do. They don't do much with small guys like me. They're really there more for the big commercial guys.
And their work isn't connected to this program at all.
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's a county by county. The county has employees that do drive around and look and make sure land is being utilized the way it's reported. So
Tom has a question. I'm guessing it's Tom. It might be Melissa. So sorry, Melissa.
Well, that's actually a pretty good question. So I'm guessing maybe it's Melissa. That's a pretty intelligent question for Tom.
Too many letters.
But he's trying to contribute to the program, and here we're just slapping him down again. So that's a yes and no question, Tom. I'd have to pay a surveyor to come out and resurvey or place markers and then file the plat for me with the city. And I would say that would probably, I'd be guessing here, but that's probably going to run me $3,000 to $5,000, I would guess, for the amount of property I have. However, if my fences that keep the cows in need to be replaced, that cost is going to exceed that amount. So it really depends on what you need, what you're comparing it to. You're going to spend that money, yes. But if I was looking at spending $10,000 to replace a bunch of fences, then maybe it would be worth it to do that, because literally if I lost my ag valuation, it would cost me $10,000 the first year in it for taxes. So that's not something to scoff at.
Going back to the livestock part real quick, Philip. So the bees and the cattle are not interchangeable, right? So you can't say I had cattle on my property for 2 years and then switched over to bees.
I'm not sure about whether you can do that in the middle of establishing it, Todd.
Okay.
But yes, if you have a current ag exemption that's based on cattle, you can immediately switch that to being based on bees.
Oh, okay.
Matter of fact, that's what I did on one of the properties that I'm keeping bees on. She had just a few cows, 2 or 3. It's only like 8 acres, 7 or 8 acres in her case. And she had cows, and the cows were getting in her flower beds, and they were, getting into, sort of being a nuisance. They were breaking through the fences, and the bulls around were trying to break through her fences to get to the cows. And, it's kind of they're large animals. So she was tired of that. So she was happy to get the bees instead and pay me a little bit to keep the bees there.
Todd, that was a really good question. And it made me think of, I was going to ask, thinking about going into a 5-year relationship with a potential client, how can you guarantee that that's something you could follow through with? But then I realized as you were asking that, Todd, that like if something happened to Philip and he couldn't continue being someone's beekeeper, they could still hire someone else for year 4 and 5 if Philip was providing services for year 1 and 2 and 3. Is that correct, Philip?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, they're not, and my contract with someone says that they can end it at any time and I can end it at any time. I do.
So is your contract on a year-to-year basis?
It renews automatically, but yes, I will invoice every year as a renewal. So okay. all they have to do to renew is pay the invoice, and it just continues on.
Do you have your client pay an annual invoice once a year? Do you break it down into multiple payments throughout the year?
Mine is one payment right now. I haven't had anybody ask me to pay it over time. I'm not sure if I would do that or not. I will tell you that I learned very quickly after the first 2 contracts that I didn't want the contracts renewing and expiring at different times of the year, because now that's something else I've got to keep in mind of when's this one going to expire. I need to get an invoice out 30 days before it expires and make sure they get payment and all that. So as I was going into my 2nd year of doing this with the 2 contracts I had, and I picked up the 3rd, now I give them a fee, and then I prorate that fee from when I start until the end of the year. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and say it. My fee for 10 colonies, up to 10 colonies, is $3,500 per year. And if I started halfway through the year, their invoice would be for half that amount to get to the end of the year. And in December, I'll send out for all of next year for every contract, and they'll pay that full year. That means I know they all renew and expire one time a year, and I deal with it once a year.
How did you come? Go ahead, Todd.
So their payment, so you invoice them obviously for whatever's due the next, like you're going to invoice them for 1 year or whatever amount of time it is, right?
Yeah. If someone came to me and said in November and said, I want to keep bees on my property, I'm going to say, okay, you're going to have to pay me for the last 2 months of this year and all of next year. I'd set it up that way. Or I might even just comp those 2 months. They're not going to get credit for the bees being there for those 2 months anyway, unless they've already had some other use on the property for the prior 10 months. But they're trying to,
But you're not in the practice of making having them make multiple payments, right? Because that could be a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I would resist that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
No, it's good. Good questions. I forgot my question I was going to ask, and like 5 other questions popped into my brain. So I was trying to go back to that original one.
But I'm writing mine down, Brian.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. Mark says, who owns the hives? They're your hives, right?
That's another great question. Yes, they are my hives. I own the hives, and I own the honey that the hives make. Ooh. I personally, just as a way to set myself apart from, there's a lot of beekeepers doing this, as you can imagine.
Thank you. That was my question. Go ahead.
Yeah. What I like to do is I offer them some of the honey that's made on their land, because people really like that. They like to get honey. A lot of people have bee yards all over, and then from their 100,000-pound vat, they give a case of pints or whatever to the landowner each year. what I do is I say, if your bees make honey, I'll give you 5% of that up to about 10 pounds. It'll just be automatic. Now, if I've got a yard right now, the one I started in Flower Mound, it was kind of a fluky thing. When I went out to walk the property, somebody had just put 8 hives right across the fence facing this man's property. I thought it was a little bold for them to do that. I mean, if you were going to put bees on someone's property, would you put them right up against the fence of the neighbors and point them toward the neighbor's property? I just was like, wow, I can't believe they did that. So there were 8 hives there. And by the time I got my hives, which was like a month later, moved on to there were 8 more hives on another property, not 30 yards away, behind some stand of trees. And it's the same beekeeper because all the hives are brand new. It's those cheap ones you buy on the internet. They call them wax dip, but they're wax coated. Yeah. You would, if I said the name, you'd recognize it. But
like the Hoover hives or the Castle hives.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they got those, and they probably went and bought nuke and stuck it in there and set them up. Then they'll probably do fine. But you could just tell by the setup that it was the same beekeeper. At least on the second property, they still shoved them right up to the fence, but they pointed them 90 degrees from this property that I'm helping this guy with. So.
You know, Philip, there's some companies that do the corporate beekeeping management model where they've done the math where they can charge these corporations huge amounts of annual fees, put a colony on a rooftop or a couple colonies somewhere, throw a package in, hire a 20-something-year-old kid to go out to look at that colony twice a week. And if that colony dies, it's no big deal because they've done the math and it makes it work out. I could see the same happening in Texas where beekeepers take advantage of a system like this and do kind of exactly what you just said. Throw a nuke in a bunch of boxes so their clients can get the ag valuation and then walk away from those bees and just let them die at the end of the year and take the money because it's a profitable thing to do. It's a terrible thing to say, but does that happen in Texas? Do you see that with other people?
I'm sure it does. I don't have enough knowledge to know of whether that happens or not. I don't know who this beekeeper is that has bees over there. And I don't know anything about them. So, and they may be fine. They may be taking. I did notice on some of the hives they did add honey supers to them. I don't know if that's. I'd be interested to know if they're getting anything because I'm not getting anything. I'm blaming my lack of honey on the weather and on the other beekeeper. Of course, I've got to have an excuse. It's not that I've got my 6th consecutive year of bad beekeeping. Can't be that.
Yeah.
So
now.
What kind of tax advantage are these landowners getting? You're charging a service that obviously the tax is going to the tax advantage is going to be more than that. But I mean, do you know what we're talking money wise about that over a year?
I mean, it's what people pay in taxes on property in Texas is public knowledge. So you can look that up on anybody's property. As long as you can actually drill down on a map and pull all their account information. It's public knowledge. So yes, you can figure out what the tax advantage would be. Now, once they get the ag valuation, then it becomes a little bit more nebulous. They don't really put what it's valued at based on the agricultural use. But most of the time it does say land and there's a line item and improvements and there's a line item on just about everybody's tax statement.
It could be any amount then basically, right? And what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. And where I have one of the properties, well, all 3 of the properties I have my bees on are very high value properties because they're so close to the metroplex. As a matter of fact, I sold a nuke to a guy just recently and it was just kind of fluky. I'm not sure where he found my name, but his property is literally about a quarter of a mile the way the bee flies from my Crossroads property. And he had actually just, while he was buying the nuke from me, he said, yeah, I live in Plano, but my land is in Crossroads. And I said, really? Because Crossroads is a pretty small area. And I said, where? And he gave me the address, and I drove to where it is, and I pulled it up on Google Maps. And literally, the bees I sold him were in Crossroads. So when he got there, he said, my bees are really close to here. Am I going to lose a bunch of them? I said, yes, you are going to lose a bunch of the foragers. So I shook a whole bunch of nurse bees in this package before I sent him off with them. But yes, but I noticed when I looked up his property that it was on the market, and it was 5 acres, and it was $750,000. So
wow,
that's, even by California standard, that's probably not too shabby.
That's not shabby at all. DC has a really good question here.
What kind of business license do you have, and do you have to carry insurance? Insurance is optional for just about anybody for any reason, unless you're working for corporations who require insurance. Business license, yes, you have to. If you're representing yourself as a business, you have to register with the Secretary of State and pay it's less than $300 in fees to get that all established. But I set up an LLC with my company. So,
how did you determine your annual fees, Philip?
How did I do that? I think I just heard some beekeepers talking about it. If you get in the chat groups, most people will say that it's that you can expect to pay $2,000 to $35,000, $4,000 to hire a beekeeper to keep bees on your land per year.
So it's kind of the industry standard.
It's kind of what the going rate, I believe, is. I feel like I would be at the top of that range for what I charge, but I may not be. I don't know. I know anytime that this is discussed, there's plenty of people out there who said, how dare would I pay somebody else to keep bees on my property and they take the honey? And I try not to reply to them, go keep bees for a year and then get back with me.
Yeah.
See if you can keep them alive.
How you might have mentioned this while I was writing down some notes. Do you have to have a certain amount of number of hives when you do this? Do you have to have more than 3, or?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Can you actually get away with 1 for the tax valuation? Or?
No, you can't. I had the term in my mind that they use. It's called it's not minimum density, but it's minimum something. Maybe not even use the term minimum. But no, each county establishes the number of hives required. Generally, and probably I would say 80% of the counties at least, they require 5 or 6 hives for the first 5 acres, and then 1 hive for every 2 to 2.5 acres after that. That's kind of the expectation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, for example, the 2 properties that I keep bees on in Crossroads are literally touching, and I actually give them a break on pricing because I can work both sets of colonies on one trip from the same driveway. So I priced those 2 contracts as one property. They're required to have, I think, 7 hives each, or maybe 7 hives each, which is a total of 14. So the way I priced those contracts is I do $3,500 for the first 10, and I do $300 per hive after that. And then I have the option to keep it more if I want to. But but that's the way I priced that one, because it's in my benefit to get a little extra money because I'm going out there anyway. It doesn't take that much longer to work two 10 hive yards than it does one.
Is this your first year doing this or your second?
It's my second year on two of them and my first year on the one in Flower Mound that I have.
What unforeseen costs have you seen in this part of your business venture?
Well, mainly, gas being $4 a gallon doesn't help things. Now, having said that, if you're registered as a business, I take mileage off of at what is it now, 75 cents a mile or something off your federal taxes. So that actually almost covers your expenses of gas, on tax savings. So, or at least against if you make income, if you're not making any income, you don't get savings. That's the way it works. But yes, now I will. Okay, there's VS at 73.
No, he's wrong. It's 72.5 cents is the federal mileage allowance, and the reason I know that is because I have staff that turns in a mileage sheet every 2 weeks, and then the formula it's 72.5 cents. So sorry, Tom. I'll report you if you're reporting 73 cents. I'll talk to the state of Missouri about that on your behalf, if you don't mind.
I want to give everybody out there who drives a long way to Nobby a little pointer. Don't go out there as a person. Go out there as a business, because you can charge that mileage.
Yep.
And that's a long trip for me. That's a big chunk of change to save on my taxes to drive out to Nobby and back.
That's right. Every expense at Nobby.
Yeah. And you go out to dinner and your hotel, everything. But yes.
I have a line item that says education.
Mm-hmm.
It all goes in there. Education.
Yeah. I was asking. Keith is. I don't want to reveal too much of his business, but he has 9 hives, and I said, yeah, you really should set yourself up as a business, even if you just sell a little bit of honey, because you can write off if you buy an extractor or any of that equipment. Go ahead and reduce your income by that amount.
That's right. Phillip, is there anything else you want to add? Any other questions that I haven't asked about this whole process? Now, if you're in the chat, if you can mention what state you're in, and if you have anything at all like what Texas has, that'd be great. Hopefully other people can utilize some of these ideas. I don't know if there's any other states out there that have anything like this.
Yeah, I would imagine that a lot of states have an ag exemption. It's just that they haven't let bees get qualified for it. Now,
gotcha.
I don't know who was the beekeeper that was politically connected, but it was probably a pretty large one. But the argument I think that won everybody over was, my bees on this property benefit all of the properties around. They're flying around and pollinating all the different trees and flowers and fruits and vegetables all over. Why aren't they getting credited with the benefit? Because the reasoning behind all ag valuation is to promote what they call open space, which is what you said, keep people from using it to develop another subdivision or whatever. And in Texas, they also have I'm going to use the term exemption, although I shouldn't. They have a wildlife management category that counts. Now, the difference in having a wildlife management category, or whatever they call it, is that you're improving the land somehow or another, but that requires a whole lot of reporting. You have to go out, and if you say, I'm going to promote monarch butterflies, you have to go out, this is what I planted, This is what I observed. This is how many I saw. You have to do surveys and things like that. And there's different categories. One thing you have to do is you have to get rid of invasive species or something like that. So you could say, I hired a man to come out and trap and kill a bunch of the hogs, or got rid of the raccoons, or whatever. So, it gets you exactly the same valuation as the ag, but they will automatically deduct 1 acre for that and charge you full value for it, whether there's a house on it or not. I don't know why they do that, but there are other ways to get a similar valuation. Yeah.
Besides like pollinators, what other animals would people do that for typically?
Well, you can't do like a domestic animal for the wildlife.
Yeah.
Like I said,
I'm smelling a skunk right now, so that's why I'm looking around. Sorry.
Well, if you eradicate that skunk, the skunk is considered a pet. So if you eradicate that skunk and keep a record of it, it's going to help you.
Yeah.
It works. But you also have to have a plan. I considered doing that when I first bought my property, but I was told by a lot of people that, man, you are signing on for a lot of paperwork when you do that.
Yeah. Yeah. But, any tips around writing contracts with your clients? Any lessons learned that we might be able to learn from?
Well, I'll have to pull back the curtain now. The way I got started in doing this, it's something I wanted to do, but a good friend of mine that I've known since college has one of those properties, and he had cows on his property for a while, but then I noticed there were some beehives on his property, and he had signed on to a contract with a different beekeeper in the area, and I knew who that beekeeper was, but he needed 7 colonies, and I think they dropped 2 pallets of 4 colonies each. They're a decent sized commercial beekeeper. And they dropped them there, and I said, "Oh, I didn't know you were doing bees." I said, "I'd keep bees out there for you." I said, "I'll give you, me and this guy go way back, so the way I told him, I'm just going to be completely truthful. Him and his wife and my wife and I, we're all really good friends. I said, I'll give you the hot wife discount. That's what I told him. but so I started keeping bees there and gave them a pretty good discount. But and then that's when their neighbor, she wanted to get rid of those cows, and I started keeping them for her as well. So it's worked out that's how I got into it. But now, like I said, I would like anybody's ideas on here about I think what I'm going to have to do is swallow my pride and start going to the local beekeeping meetings. That's the only way I'm going to get my name out there, I think.
Well, I think, you hit on something that rung a bell in my brain. You talked about the properties or neighborhoods or areas that are upper end, those high end neighborhoods. Those tend to be the clients, I would think, that would be the population that would benefit from something like this. When you're talking about $3,500 a year, that's $17,500 for 5 years before they get any returns from that, right?
Okay.
So
yeah.
So thinking about where can you advertise, where are those areas where you can advertise, whether it be Facebook pages or store bulletin board, you know what I'm talking about? You want to put your name out, not necessarily to beekeepers, but to people who have property, those properties that can afford it. And I'm not sure the answer to that, but
I have a sign up out on my Crossroads property, sort of saying, basically at the top it says, "Do you have 5 to 20 acres?" And it talks about honeybees. I made a little bit of a mistake with it because you can't really read it from the road. You have to stop and get out and read it. Poorly designed, but because all you really want is to start that conversation with something like that. But you mentioned that the man and his wife that I'm keeping bees on in Flower Mound, he does not have an ag exemption currently. And literally, when I went out there, it was, it was just early this spring. So I'm actually am looking for places close to my home that I can keep bees at. And I would, if I had a place like his that was really close to my house, I wouldn't charge them. That would just be my home bee yard.
Well, this is what you need to do, Philip. You've got your farmer's market coming up soon. You need to make a sign and put it on a table at your farmer's market. Say, advertising that, looking for a bee yard, looking for ag valuation services.
Right.
And that's where I've gotten some great connections. Customer after customer after customer. And those people are appreciators of honeybees because they're coming to you to buy honey. So I think that's the way to go, is put a sign up at the farmer's market and find that one to come to you.
That's a great point, because the way I got the yard in Flower Mound was one of my honey customers. I told her, I said, look, I had to get rid of my bees here at home because my son is allergic. And she's like, oh no. And she went on Nextdoor and made a post that this guy needs somewhere to move his bees. His kid's allergic. And I was like, no, that's not what happened. They're already gone. I just want to have bees close so I can make honey to sell locally.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, it because she misunderstood, I got a lot of traction out of that. A whole lot of people came on and commented, I'll take the bees. You can put them at my house. It's just a whole lot of people wanting me to, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to take my bees to a neighborhood that's like my own. It's already risky enough for me to keep them at my own home.
Yeah.
So I had a whole lot of offers, but then this one came up, and I looked at it on an aerial, and it was only, like I said, he only has 6 acres. But when I looked at it on an aerial, he backs up to this person that has 10 acres, and this person that has 10 acres, and this person has 8 acres. And it's a huge field, of a total of like 50 or 60 acres behind his house. And I said, I'm going to look at that. So I went there and started talking to him. And I mentioned I was literally leaning towards keeping bees there for free because I didn't think he could get the ag exemption.
Yeah.
And as I talked to him, he has not 6 acres, 5.9 acres. So in my mind, he didn't qualify. But as I was talking to him, he said, well, the lady at the tax office says she'll only count 0.9 acres for my house, and she'll let me have the valuation. And I'm like, oh, in that case, yeah, let's work something out. Now, for him and to get the contract, I've set his up to where I've discounted his first year from $3,500 down to $1,000. And then it's going to go up every year, $625, and it'll be $3,500 at year 5. So that I get my bees there. It helps him out a little bit. He's investing in getting that savings on his tax bill, and we're both happy. So
yeah.
And it gets my name out a little bit too. You have to do some creative things sometimes to set yourself apart from other people.
Sure.
But,
and you haven't had your farmers market start up yet. They're starting pretty soon.
Well, it's been going.
You just haven't been going.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't have anything to sell, Brian.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of in the same place. I'm pretty darn close.
So
I wanted to actually shift gears a little bit. Since you have such farmers market experience, I wanted to throw a farmers market conversation on the table.
I've got a jar for $1,500. The finest hot honey that's ever made its way to Texas.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about interacting with the public, interacting with non-beekeepers. I've had a couple of experiences the past couple of weeks that I just had to share, and maybe it can help people think about how to interact with the public, or at least just be a prompt for some good stories being told. So I have 4 colonies in this one backyard. We used to rent a horse from a lady. One of our kids did Western Airs, which was like a horse riding thing. Ended up with 4 colonies in the backyard. So it's kind of like a I wouldn't call it suburban, not quite suburbia, not quite rural, kind of somewhere in between with large plots and horse property kind of things. So I'm working the hives, and someone comes walking towards me, just opens the gate to the back, closes the gate, and starts walking towards me. All right, someone's going to talk to me about bees. There's this like 60-year-old lady with like blue hair comes walking over. Hi, how you doing? Are you the beekeeper? Yeah. Oh, we've been feeding your bees for you for like the past month. Uh-huh. As I'm pulling my honey supers off my colonies. Right? And and I could tell she's like, she was expecting enthusiasm and thankfulness and didn't get that and was like, so I'm like trying to be nice and not say anything. And finally, like, she's catching my vibe isn't so positive, right? So she's like,
you're sliding her $50. Don't tell anybody else about this.
she's poking at me. She's like, well, do you have any advice? Is there anything we should do? Should I feed 1-to-1? Should I feed 2-to-1? And I'm like, and this is when I'm like, ma'am, I wasn't going to say anything because I can tell your heart's in the right place. I'm trying to make honey here. So I explained to her that most of the time feeding honey or nectar, sugar water to bees is great. However, there's this thing called funny honey. And I don't want to make funny honey, right? So I have a nice conversation with this lady. I walk away with her number because she wants bees in her backyard. And so does Joan, who she got the idea from. Turns out there was a garden party in this neighborhood last week, and this was all the conversation because Paul, the other neighbor, comes talking to me about it while I'm back at my truck after I'm done talking to this other lady. Mm-hmm. And here's another guy who's like, yeah, helping the bees, blah, blah. So finally,
the whole
neighborhood. They got the whole neighborhood feeding bees. So I'm like, look, sir. Next time here's my card. Next time you folks have a garden party, you invite me, and I'm gonna teach the whole neighborhood about bees, and I'm gonna teach you all at the same time instead of popcorning all of this. Stop feeding my bees syrup in June, kind of thing. So the whole talk is gonna be like all the different reasons you feed bees. All the different reasons, and it's going to lead to so many different questions and all this. Right. And it led to a conversation with the other lady. This is how it started, with one lady who's feeding. She's got a hummingbird feeder in her backyard, and my bees started hitting her hummingbird feeder. We do not have a great flow. We haven't had a great flow since March this year, so they've been hitting that hummingbird feeder probably for a while. And then she gave her other neighbor the idea, and then they went to this garden party and started talking about it. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So like, first of all, I'm like, I don't want to be like the mansplainer guy, because I feel like there are times I've been that guy at the market where, especially with like the Texas beekeeper, like in those young female people come up and they're like, I've been watching the Texas. I don't correct all the things that I think are wrong about what they're seeing there, because they get this look on their face like, what do you know? She's clearly knows what she's doing. So I don't want to be like the mansplainer. You know what I mean? Right. But as this lady was poking me, I was like, I just gotta say something. And like, their hearts are in the right place. But the fact is, and this is what made me realize, so many people don't know a goddamn thing about honeybees. They're starting at absolute zero, not absolute zero, because they know things, but they know them wrong, right? Yeah. They think that they're helping the bees, and that's the thing. Like 10 months out of the year they would be, but the 2 months out of the year when I'm trying to make honey, so go ahead.
It's really hard to talk to people about, especially honey, and the cyclical nature of honey. Because they, and I can't blame them for thinking this way, because I can't say I thought about it before I got bees. But
Right.
people really think that bees make honey year round. And you can get it and sell it year round. That's their sort of base knowledge. And I literally someone will say, do you have any honey available? And I said, and I'll usually say, no, I don't have any now. I should know if I'm going to have some around middle of June or 1st of July. And they'll go, their follow-up question will literally be, will you have some in a month? And this would be like back in March. And you just want to say, didn't I just tell you? I'll know. But they don't think of it that way. They think maybe you got a backlog, or maybe you'll figure out a way to get more, or I don't know exactly what but you almost have to start and say, listen, in our area, we can collect honey middle of June to middle of July, and then maybe we can collect some over in October, November. Yeah. And that's it for the whole year. So if I don't get it, then it's not going to be got. It's unless we move them next to a lot of nice garden club ladies who feed your bees sugar water year round.
You know what? Brian reminded me of something that happened to me a couple years ago. I saw this red honey, and I didn't know what this was. Well, it ended up being some lady down the road had a whole bunch of hummingbird feeders in her backyard. But here's the thing, that this is the only reason I saw it is because I had an abscond or a dead out or something, whatever, and bees were robbing it out, and they took everything except the red honey. Now, bees will take that honey or take that sugar syrup from the hummingbird feeder, red dye, whatever dye, and they will bring it back to the hive. And this has been my experience the last couple of years. They will bring it back, they will dry it down, and they will cap it, and they will never touch it again, because I've had frames that I wanted to get cleaned out with bits of honey here and there, and I'd put it out for the bees to rob, and they would take all the honey except the red honey. So
that's wild.
It is weird. It is weird. And it doesn't, when it's in the comb and it's sealed, it has a reddish hue. You know it's not amber. You know it's not light colored. It just, it doesn't look right. And if you break a cap open and then put it on your finger, you could see the red dye, if they use red dye. I've actually seen patches, little patches on some frames here and there every once in a while that the bees will never touch, the robber bees. And
really?
I guarantee you, it came from a hummingbird feeder, but that hummingbird feeder did not have red dye in it. So
wow. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, they go through the whole motion, but they never touch it again. It's weird.
I have fun with people at the market because everybody wants to know what's in the honey, what flowers they're working, this and that and the other. And in this area, I tell them there's really no way for me to know. There's so many ornamentals and things that people plant in their gardens that there's no way to know. And then I always finish it off by saying there might be some root beer from the elementary school down the road in this honey.
Yeah.
Because bees will work there, you know. I've seen bees working the trash cans at 7-Eleven. So, I always throw that in there to let people know. And the question that always drives me bananas is when they say, is there any glyphosate in your honey? And I'll go,
well, all right, Philip. I'm a customer, and I come up to you and I say, is your honey organic? How do you respond?
Here's how I respond.
Yeah.
I say, I don't even say no. I'll go full politician on this one.
Yeah.
I say, if you're buying organic honey in the United States, it is coming from some other country who has lower standards for what's called organic honey than the United States does. I said, to be in the United States, to be organic honey, you have to guarantee that your bees are working floral sources that have never seen a chemical. And your bees trespass. They go anywhere that's available to them. And there's not a property that I know of in the United States that can control a bee flight of up to, they say it's up to 6-7 miles in some cases around their property. And I said, when you see organic honey in the store, flip the bottle over and check the source. It's always going to come from Brazil or from Vietnam or from Turkey or somewhere, and they don't have the same standards for what's called organic, but our USDA accepts the descriptions of other countries, and that's why you see it. So it's a long explanation, but that's my response, Brian.
Yeah,
I take it a step further. This just my belief. We've been spraying Roundup on the ground for how long? Since the early 80s, maybe the late 70s. And Brian, I think we talked about this in St. Louis at the airport.
Yeah.
All that stuff has been sprayed everywhere and in mass quantities. At some point, there's some of that stuff that's getting up into the atmosphere. So it can travel anywhere. But when it rains, it comes back down to the earth. And you don't know, I mean, I don't know how much, it might be negligible, but it's not organic anymore. When that droplet hits a plant, that's not organic, technically. But it could travel across the country. It could go around the world. I'll give you an example of this. 7 years ago, or actually 6 years ago, we had a fire right up here in the Sierras. It ended up burning almost 500,000 acres. It burned from Labor Day all the way up to almost Christmas. And 13 days after it started, that smoke plume it reached Paris, France. So air moves all across the planet. So if that stuff gets up in the atmosphere, which I'm sure it has, it could drop at any place whenever it gets diluted with water. So that's just my 2 cents. So I really don't think there's anything organic anymore, if you ask me.
I think I spent 3 summers, at least 2 summers, with a 3-gallon tank of Roundup slung across my back, walking through cotton fields, spraying Johnson grass. I got it all over me. And yeah,
explains a lot, Philip.
I don't think I have any issues stemming from that.
Yep. So I often hit on the fact points that you guys have talked about, but I actually start by turning it back on them. I say organic is such a buzzword and it's used to mean so many different things. What do you mean by that? Because I can say I use organic treatments, but that's not what they're talking about. I can talk about oxalic acid and formic acid and thymol, and these are all organic treatments, but that's not what they mean. So I always put it back on them. What do they mean? So instead of hitting every single one of those bullet points you guys have all just talked about, I can target whichever bullet point they're thinking about and respond to that one specific bullet point and maybe expand on it from there. And I do love talking about that USDA. You don't have to have a product that's grown or produced in the United States to have USDA grade A on the front of that label, and that drives me crazy. Holy cow.
I see that all over. I like to save money like anybody else, so I buy a lot of stuff at Aldi, and they sell honey for like $3 a pound or something ridiculous. And they have that organic USDA splashed all across it, and it'll literally say honey, and then in tiny print right below the honey, in just a slightly different color than the label itself, will say product or something, just to get past the law. Oh, we didn't label it as pure honey or whatever. Now in Texas, they're not supposed to be able to even use the term honey if it's not pure honey. But yeah,
you guys You guys also have laws around like calling it Texas honey or local honey and blending with honey from out of state. Is that right? Something's happened around that.
I don't know if that ever went through. There was a big push just 6 or 8 months ago. There was a bill that was written, and they were trying to agree on a percentage of Texas honey that it could be, and they were getting hung up on 75% or 50% or whatever it had to be, because to be honest with you, I'm not going to call anybody out, but there's some pretty well-known Texas beekeepers who buy honey from all over the country and sell it under a Texas label with the Texas mat, the shape of Texas.
Yep.
And that honey comes from, most of that honey is coming from, like I said, Minnesota, the Dakotas, because that's where honey comes from. And they're blending it with maybe some Texas honey, but it's such a small amount you wouldn't even know it, because they could not sell the amount they sell with what they're producing in Texas. It would be impossible.
There's a Colorado company that's like that too, that puts Colorado honey on every single jar, and there's just no way. You do the math, and there's just no way. Now, Philip, one thing I like about you, and I've liked about you almost immediately, you've got a weird sense of humor. Like me, your humor's a little bit out there.
Clothing I wear.
Yeah. You can get a little bit sarcastic. I've had a time where I've had to bite my tongue or two with a customer. We had one lady. This took me everything I had the other day. She comes up to us. We do a matcha creamed honey. She looks Jen straight in the face and goes, "Where in Japan do you source your matcha from?" And I was like, are you kidding me? I want it to be like, we go all the way to the Amazon. We click. And I was, like some customers are just so ridiculous. You want to just say something. So, you want to be sarcastic or whatever. Do you have those? Have you had any of those moments where your sense of humor has gotten you in trouble with the customer?
The time I had to bite my tongue was the first time I sold honey at the farmer's market. Yeah. I was in my third year of beekeeping, and here I am at the farmer's market selling real Capel honey. And a lady came up to me, and she put me through the ringer, because she was a local beekeeper and she had never heard of me before. And here I was at the market selling honey from the town she lives in. And she goes, "Where do you have bees?" And I was like, "Well, most of them are at my house, but I have some down at my farm." I said, "This is the honey from those, and this is the ones from my house." And she goes, "What bee club do you go to?" I said, "I haven't been to any bee club. I watch a lot of YouTube, and I have a lot of friends on YouTube that I follow, but I haven't attended any bee clubs." "Do you treat your bees?" I said, "Well, I use oxalic acid vapor, but it's an organic treatment." And at that point, she kind of nodded. And at that point, that's the first point where she kind of thought, okay, this guy's not really an imposter, And after she asked me about
it, you're a beekeeper.
Yeah, she knew that I knew what I was doing just in the talks and the way I answered my questions, and she's like, "Okay." But what I wanted to say, Brian, my personality, I wanted to say, "No, I haven't been to any bee meetings, but I can come speak to your club if you want me to." That's what I wanted to say. But I didn't say it. I did want to say that.
You ever get a customer ask you if you have Manuka honey? Do you have any Manuka honey?
Yeah, I have gotten that question. Yes, that's one where you also have to just be very polite.
Yep. I got myself in trouble with a lady that time. Yep, I think I mansplained her a little bit, so I learned my lesson on that one. So I slowed down on that.
I like to have fun with. There are people that come to my booth, which I really enjoy, that that really appreciate honey and they understand it already. They get it already. They like to taste honey from different parts of the country and different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And they get excited about it. So I had a family, and the mother's like, yeah, we're kind of honey snobs. We're, this and that. And they started tasting it. And then the girl who was like, I don't know, 10 years old or whatever, she tasted my Richland honey, which has a real distinct flavor. And she goes, oh, that tastes just like Manuka honey. And I said, oh, in that case, that's $75 for a jar. That's not 16, that's 75.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have any other customer stories or ridiculous questions you've gotten asked?
Let me think.
Oftentimes I'll get like, what kind of bees do you keep? And I've learned that I just say honeybees, and that answers most of the people questions. Then they roll their eyes, and then I go, okay, now I can have a different conversation. And then I talk about the different, blah, blah, this is what I get, blah, 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 this is why. But I learned that I start talking Carniole and Caucasian. People have no idea what I'm talking about most of the time. So I just go to honeybees.
Yeah, I waste more time at the market talking to people who either are keeping bees now or have kept them in the past.
Yeah.
The ones where people have kept them in the past and their spouse made them get rid of the bees, that makes me sad when I talk to them. And you can tell they miss having the bees. And I usually, like, when the spouse finally comes up, I just appeal to them, let them get some more bees. Come on. But they were stinging people. It's like, well, And
when you think about,
one guy said, can I come out and help you with your bees from time to time? Because he used to have them, and his wife wouldn't let him.
What did you take him up on it?
I told him he could, but I don't think we ever got his information. It never happened.
Yeah.
But
do you get a lot of people coming up to you at the booth doing that kind of thing? Geez, I'd love to learn about bees. Do you ever need any help? Do you get like usually like young kids kind of thing? Not young kids, but like 20-something-year-olds.
No, I haven't. I'll tell you, I got a request the other within the last month, and I kick myself sometimes after I talk to people, and in like a day later I go, you know what, I should have handled that completely differently.
Yeah.
And this is one of them. A lady called me and she said, my husband and I, we like to get each other very unique gifts, and I want to get him a bee experience.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, I was in the mind of, okay, I said, I don't do that. I've been thinking about it, but I don't do that. And then I started thinking, I can't really, they're not going to want to go drive an hour and a half down to the farm for that bee experience. I don't think they want it locally. And here I am, the local beekeeper. And I said, I really can't start dragging people out to other people's property and exposing them to that kind of liability. So I kind of blew her off a little bit. And then I'm out here, I brought home like 2 or 3 tiny little nukes. And I'm like, why didn't I just tell her to bring him over to my house and show him these little nukes in my backyard? They didn't have to charge it. That would have been a nice thing to do for somebody who was trying to do something nice for their spouse, and probably would have led to other things. But I totally mishandled that. I should have figured out a way, somehow or another, to say yes, and I did.
That's how you get better, though. You have and that's what's great for markets. You have human interaction after human interaction, and you can think about ways to get better. I had a similar experience this year, Philip, where I walked away from I should have said something different. I met this girl who was farmer for one of the properties I managed.
Hold on.
And she
Brian.
called me up. No,
Time out.
Yeah.
You had a whole sentence there that went blank.
You froze up.
All right. So
yeah.
start out. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're fine.
All right. So essentially, this friend of mine called me up, and she's now a farmer for a new property, and it was like a property with quite a bit of acreage, and in a town probably close enough that it would have worked out. And she was like, "These people are interested in having bees. What are your management prices?" And she knew I did that because she was the farmer on a place where I did it previously. And I gave her my price sheet. I threw it by her, and I said, give it to your clients. Let me know what you think. And I never heard from them again. And as I walked away from it, I realized I should have picked up that yard for free, because it would have been a great yard with a lot of acreage where I could have put a lot of bees on it. I should have offered them like a case of pints to have bees on their property. And that was another one where I went, I should have handled that interaction differently. But that's how you get better. You think about every single one, and you think about how you can do it differently.
And yeah, I'm not certain that you should have just said it'll be free, but you could have said, look, this is what normal charges, but man, there's more benefits to your place. I'll do it for half price.
Yeah. But I missed an opportunity.
Yeah.
I missed an opportunity of something I needed, right? That was when I could have used a really big yard. And you're right, I could have brought the price down, but I just
I'll tell you the one that's making me crazy recently. I've had two situations where people have bees that have moved into their houses here in Capel. And they call me and say, do you remove bees? And I said, well, it really just kind of depends where they are and how difficult they are to get to. And in both cases, they were going to be kind of a messy job, and I referred them to the guy down the road that does that. And then I always go, should I go out and spend the money on the thermal camera and get the bee vac and just suck it up and give them some price, even if it's high and it includes a lift and everything I would ever need. How many times are you going to have to tell people no before they quit calling?
Right.
So those are the ones I struggle with the most. I mean, I don't really want to hang off the side of a roof like I saw Tim Blake doing, and I'm not going to do that. And then I see the ones that Rodney Milton does, where he's on a boom that's 30 or 40 feet in the air. That doesn't excite me either. But some of these, like the one of them was like 12 feet in the air, but it was it's behind brick. So in that case, you're probably going to have to go inside and cut through the wall to get through them. Or they're going in through the brick. Now this last one, what do you do when where the bees are going in is in a little soffit overhang, which you think, okay, they're probably in that soffit overhang, but that soffit overhang butts up to a boxed out chimney. It's brick. Okay. So chances are where that boxed out chimney is, there's a little skinny pipe in the middle of that and a big wood framed box with brick around the outside. If they're in that spot, it's going to be a job to get them out.
Yeah.
You might have to rip brick out, and they're not going to understand that. So those kind of things, you're like, how do you, if you had thermal camera, you could probably kind of figure that out. Maybe at least you'd know where they weren't. But in one of those cases, the bees were getting into the person's, I think it was a rental property, because she said she was talking for someone else. She said the bees are getting into the house. Well, about 2 or 3 feet over from where the bees were getting in, there was a can light, and they think they were getting into the ceiling somehow and coming down through the can light, which made pretty good sense. But when that's the one that was up against the chimney and the soffit that came up at an angle to the chimney. But man, if I just had a thermal camera, I could have gone over there, in the evening late when it wasn't too bright, and probably figured it out.
Philip, as we had you on to talk about land valuations, thinking about cutouts is yet another diversification opportunity that I definitely chose to never dive into, because I I'm the last guy you want cutting your wall open for sure. And I at least have the wisdom to know that, right? So
Yeah, but I think that may be a better position to be in than me, of knowing too much about how difficult it could be, because I can always figure, I know what's behind that wall, and it almost takes somebody who doesn't know. It's like the person that we always joke that if you're doing government work, the person that gets the job is the person that left something major out. That's what they needed. And that's why you get such bad work. It's kind of like that if you're pricing people to do cutouts. Which one of these fools is going to forget what can really go wrong? But
are there any other like diversification sources of income that you've found in your business that you can highlight besides the usual like market stuff or the land valuation we talked about?
well, the one that I want to do is what you're doing somewhat of, is at least offer to do consulting on like an hourly basis. I think that's a really good one, and I think that one would work out. And I would also like to offer management of other people's hives if they wanted it. Now, the management of other people's hives, in my mind, I would still charge almost as much as I would charge for one of these pollination things, but they would provide the boxes and the bees and all that stuff. Now, when it came down to the honey, that's the part I can't understand, because if they really wanted all the honey and wanted to keep it themselves, they're going to have to get it themselves. I'm not going through that effort. But I thought you could probably do a 50-50 split on honey as payment would probably work out. They're still going to be paying more for honey.
You can charge them an extraction fee to have them, or to extract it for them if they want the honey, but they want you to do that. Then you could charge them a bottling fee if they want it put in jars and not in a bucket. So, I mean, it can lead to other things if you incorporate that into the annual management too. Then you can upcharge them if you want them to make it. You can make creamed honey or hot honey for them. You can do all that kind of stuff too. So I think there's definitely potential there. But you're absolutely right. When when the harvest of honey becomes part of the equation, that's something that's going to be variable from year to year. So if there's a year that's terrible and there's no honey at all, and that was part of the payment or the expectation, then what happens? So those can be the challenging parts for sure. And so what if it goes queenless? What if it swarms and then doesn't requeen and then goes laying worker? Is that on your dime to fix that colony?
I think I would offer, if I had the pricing structure that I would want to set that up, we're not counting every nickel, then I think I would offer that anyway. I'll guarantee that you'll have live bees flying in and out of your colony between April and October. I can't guarantee anything through the winter, but through those months, I'll figure it out.
And that's typically what I do too, Philip. I tell people I'm gonna manage your bees just like I manage mine. I'm gonna treat them at the same time. I'm gonna requeen them. If there's a problem in your colony, I'm gonna fix it with my resources, just like I would if it was my colony in my outyard. And that cost is incorporated into your annual management. I'm not going to upcharge you for every pollen patty I put on and every syrup, gallon of syrup I put in there. That's all incorporated in. That includes replacement of queen, replacement of dead outs, replacement of...
Yeah, that's the way I would handle that too, for sure.
Yeah, because they don't want to deal with that all. They want you to do it, right? We're paying you to be the expert. You be the expert. You got a problem, solve it. That's what I'm paying you for.
Yeah, but every now and again, it's probably just like my other business that I do. You have somebody, I literally have a project going on right now. Hopefully they're not watching. Wants me to design I'll keep it very generic. They want me to design their business, their working space for them. And I used whatever the information they gave me, and I gave them a plan. And they're like, oh, I don't like this at all. I would like something more like this. And they sketch very crudely what they want.
Yeah.
So I goes, you know what? That's very amateurish, but okay, I can kind of see this. I can make this work a little bit. And but it's, there's nothing to scale on the drawing. Their room sizes are half the size they really would have to be to work. And so I go, you know what? I just redid their whole plan. I said, using your sketch as inspiration, this is what I was able to come up with. And it's like, and they're just like, I just don't get it. Why can't I get this, 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 and this? How about something like this? And they send me another crude sketch that doesn't work. And then I reply back. I said, okay, we're going to try to do this, but any further sketches I need to be somewhat to scale so they, it really works. And that made them mad, and they sent me a long email saying, look, I have no idea how big rooms are supposed to be. This is the first time I've ever done one of these, and if you can't handle it, maybe I need to go find somebody else. And I'm thinking, boy, if the contractor building this wasn't somebody I've worked with for the last 20 years and I get about 80% of my income off, I would let you go get somebody else. That's another bite your tongue moment, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah.
I talked to the contractor, and now everything goes to the contractor. I don't have to deal with them. So.
You don't always talk about your other world. You have an architect business. How does being an architect help you be a good beekeeper? How does that skill set translate over to this world, Philip?
Maybe they're both got some building involved. You guys know I build a lot of stuff. But,
yeah.
A lot of it is, I'll tell you what, it's cost me a whole lot of time as a beekeeper, because I try to solve problems that never existed in beekeeping. Because I think I look at two bee boxes that are stacked on each other, and I go, oh my gosh, there's going to be some liquefied action that sucks water between those gaps into that beehive. We've got to do a better job of not just, that's an easy way for water to get in. So I came up with this thing I called a Morse cleat for a while, and I put it on the side of the box, and it's got a little drip edge, and it keeps the water from getting to that joint and all that. I did all this stuff because the architect in me spends most of my time keeping water out of buildings.
Yeah.
So I build this, and it does exactly what I intend for it to do. But what I don't realize is that my plywood box and my pine wood cleat on the side of it, they move slightly differently. And then there's like a hairline crackle on the top where I ran some caulk on. And now water gets between those two, and my box and the cleat both rot from the inside. It's keeping water out of the hive, but the box is degrading at about 10 times those are the kind of things. And I've done all kinds of crazy stuff to my hives that I never needed to do. They've been doing these for the last 100 years, just build the box like they've been building it. So it didn't help me, Brian.
I'm so glad you said that, because I've watched you for years, and that's kind of how I felt. Like you're definitely, you make nice stuff for sure, but you're over engineering simple idea. Like I love the Texas deep stuff. I think that does solve a problem, or not necessarily a problem, but it creates a better brood chamber than what a double deep would do, right?
It does, but it doesn't produce more honey. It produces less. Now it does a year like this year where I'm having to feed everything. I'm not having to feed those Texas deep. They're storing enough honey in their brood chamber that I haven't had to feed them yet. So they are better for the bees. They're just not better for the beekeeper.
Yeah.
But I've got enough of that. I'm not building any more of them, but I've got enough laying around from dead outs and things like that I am going to put Texas deeps in some of my swing traps next year to try to get them going again. Because when you're going through every hive and you're like, they're not making honey anyway, but they still need feeding, and then you get to one of those, and it's like, well, at least I don't have to feed these. But maybe they're not so bad after all. But you're right. You can't do splits with them. You can, but it's a pain.
Yeah, it changes a lot of management practices just by changing one feature of the colony, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I've never been one of those people like, the lay-ins hive people drive me crazy. Not because it's not a better way to do it. It's, in my opinion, the Texas deep is a better format than the lay-ins hive, because it's a little too small in my mind for what the bees need. But they just say, a lot of them say, "Oh, you don't need to do it that way. Do it this way." And I'm one that says, "Try them both and see which one you like."
Tom has
No,
a
I'm
question.
pretty sure that's Tom's comment there.
That might be Melissa right there.
Tom is here. Tom's back.
I'd like to see you be a migratory concrete beekeeper.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to learn from, because I either learn from Bryan or I just outright steal from him. So Tom, what does concrete mean to you?
Uh-oh.
There you go.
That's a trick question. This is a watch out, Tom. It's a trap.
Philip, are you planning on transitioning away from the architecture business and focusing more? Like, is the beekeeping business the retirement plan? Is that the goal?
It sort of. Man, I could probably. AI is so smart. I'm going to regret saying this. But the beekeeping, well, let's just say farming. It's not even necessarily beekeeping. What I want to do is retire, but use beekeeping. It could be any kind of farming. Beekeeping is just a substitute for apple trees or Christmas trees or whatever. But I want to use the beekeeping business, because I love doing it, to allow me to build and buy stuff and write it off and enjoy the end of my life. I want a really nice shop, a really nice building that I can repair four-wheelers and cars in, and do all that stuff. Because once I start building stuff like that at the farm, it's going to cost me an increased property taxes anyway. But the business of beekeeping can allow me to do a lot of stuff I've wanted to do for a long time. I still have to pay for it, but there'll be some benefit to. So I don't know. I'm Todd. You said you were what, 62-ish, somewhere in there? Can't remember.
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah. And Bryan, you may not be thinking about this as much as we do, but we start thinking about, when are we really going to retire? How much Social Security are we going to get? How much can we earn and not have to pay a bunch of taxes on ourselves? These things start really bouncing around in your head.
No, I'm there too, for sure.
Yeah. How can I do all that? And as far as I know, the only way you can really do it is to use debt to your advantage and reduce your income that you're making doing what you really want to do. Otherwise, you're never going to get your Social Security money or any kind of retirement money out of the government, because they're going to they penalize you until, I guess, at 67 and a half, it's a little better. But
I guess I'm inferring a little bit here, Philip. I asked you about how your architectural skills apply over to your beekeeping world, but I almost heard you answer there, those are your small business skills. And thinking about your accounting skills and how you've learned those skills with your accounting business, that's something that you're definitely now applying to your beekeeping business and thinking about how you can leverage that. So that's one thing I heard really strongly in that answer there.
Now, I do not recommend anybody out there just go, "Oh, I don't want to pay taxes, so I'm going to go into debt." You've got to have the money in the backup to be able to cover that debt. You can't just say, "I'm going to make the money in beekeeping to make my note." You never want to have to make a note. You want to have the money already in the bank. You're not getting taxed on money that you have in the bank. Yes. We've got Todd on the front lines of California. Hopefully he's holding them back on that. They're talking about it out there.
I know you don't want to go down this road real quick, but they just passed some taxes the other night at midnight. They had a special session at midnight, and they signed some new taxes into law. So
they did. Are they doing the
all
wealth?
I'm going to say about that.
Okay. Yeah, they were seriously considering the wealth tax out there. I know that. But
they have to do it
Look at that. That's super excited, country roads. 75 acres.
Yeah, that's right.
I think
fantastic.
he's in West Virginia. Is that right?
I think he is, yeah. So while you guys have been talking, I've been doing a little research, and there's an act in California called the Williamson Act, and it allows people to get a break on their property tax if they have bees on their property. But I haven't dug deep into it yet to find out what the acreage requirement is. It From what I saw, it did say agricultural use, but then in another blurb that I saw, they count bees as agriculture. And the two requirements of bees has to be A, they produce honey, or B, they're used for pollinating crops. So I'm going to look into this
Cool.
the weekend, and this might be kind of another side or a different road in my business.
Yeah, and that's a great thought you have, because they talk about that in Texas as well. You're not required to make a certain amount of money, or any money, as a matter of fact, but there do have to be for some what they call productive use.
Yeah.
Okay. And pollination's a kind of an easy one. It's like, okay, I'm keeping these bees here, and they're pollinating not only my trees and fruits and vegetables and flowers and whatnot, improving the environment, but they're also taking care of all the neighbors' properties around.
Yeah.
So that doesn't result in dollars to me, but it's a benefit that meets the intent of why you have this law in the first place.
I just got a wild hair up, or a wild thought. I'm like, I could incorporate some people like Brian's neighbors of that, where those hives were, and have them feed my bees, and that's called producing honey.
Right. Got the enzymes.
Oh, jeez. As long as it's not red honey, then I'm all right. So
I had that happen one year too, Todd. I think it was 2020. That was the really drought year, and I got one box going down to Castle Rock. Got one box of honey, and it was red honey, and I'm pretty sure it was the landowners, because they were asked about it, and then it stopped. And it wasn't red honey anymore. Yeah.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. But that was like one of the few boxes, and I was still growing at that time. I was still drawing out comb. I wasn't doing markets or anything at that time. And it was a box of red honey, and I was like, "What?" I fed it back to them. And they ate that. They ate that stuff. You talked about them not eating yours, but they ate back what I gave to them, because I was like, "I can't sell this. I can't do anything with it. I might as well feed it back to them." And it was so bad of a year, I think, that they were happy to take whatever.
There's sometimes when I'm uncapping frames, I'll see a dark spot about the size of a silver dollar sometimes, and I wonder, is that red honey or not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually it's not. I've seen it though before, and I do my best to not include that half of that frame, but sometimes I just get a spoon and dig it out of there, and we're all good. But it's not. It's drops that might get in there. You have to watch it though. What happens if somebody's filling their hummingbird feeder and they're not using red dye? Then what do?
How many times do you never even know? How many times has it happened and you have no idea? Yeah, living in suburbia or even in rural places that have people around you.
This honey is so mild.
Yeah.
This honey is so clear you can't believe it.
Right.
So we're on kind of the back end of whatever flow we have. This year's been terrible. Our catalpas are finishing up. Our linden trees are just starting to bloom, but they don't look great. So my honey, I've started harvesting what I've got already, and then I'll keep doing that for the next couple of weeks. What do you guys have going on in your bee yards for the end of June, beginning of July.
Go ahead, Philip.
Okay. Well, before this morning, hey, I'm definitely not out of the woods, but before this morning, I literally was looking at a shutout. I mean, I went up to Crossroads, and there's usually a pretty big privet bloom there, and I was counting on it. And sure enough, some of the hives had some white wax drawn, and they were storing some of it. But the further I looked, there was less and less. But then I went back a couple weeks after that. They hadn't consumed it all, but they hadn't added to it at all. And that was like 10 days ago. And knowing I was going to come back out there with Keith, my mindset was that whatever honey was there 3-4 weeks ago, I'm taking it. I'm desperate, whatever they got. I'm going to feed them back sugar water. That's just the way it's going to have to be. But when we got out there and looked at it, sure enough, there wasn't a whole lot more, but there was something really shiny in the frame, about the same color. But it shouldn't have been that wet, that much later. And so we shook the frames, and it's like some of the honey would fall out of just one edge of the frame. So it's telling me there's a little bit of something coming in. It's not completely over. And I don't think it's going to save me by any stretch, but I'm not just literally, I went a few hives today. I wasn't going to feed anything in Richland because I was going to actually pull some honey, not Richland, Crossroads, but I was going to feed every colony in Flower Mound because when I was out there a little over a week ago, they were really light and there was nothing coming in. And some of my bigger hives had the same kind of, just a little bit, probably some nice ladies from the garden club feeding bees is probably what it was. But there was something there, and there was enough there where I said, you know what, these few, they're not heavy at all. They need to be fed. But if I feed them, I just kind of like, and a couple of them were like, okay, there's a queen in here and she's laying, but they're kind of filling in between the, how as they get later, they start filling in between where the queen should be laying. They're not keeping it clean for her. I'm like, man, if I feed them and they really are bringing something in now, they're going to go honeybound on me if I do that. So there was a small amount of encouragement from what Keith and I went through today. And seeing a few of the mesquite trees with some tassels on it lifted my spirits some. I'm looking forward to getting down to the farm. I hadn't been down there in about 3 weeks, and hopefully I'll see some mesquite blossoms. And I have been known to get some honey over into July from those. So
yeah.
What probably needs to happen, Brian, is I probably need to call the people at the farmers market and say, there's no way I'm going to have honey this year. Cancel my whatever reservations, and then it'll finally come in.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Then I'll have all this honey to sell. But like I said, the most I'll get down at, I was wanting 400 pounds from the Crossroads yards, and if I get 100 or 150, it'll be a miracle. I think what we saw today, there's probably 4 or 5 supers that all combined, taking a couple from this one, a couple from that one, going down into the double deeps and taking some honey off the edges, that kind of thing, piecing together. But there was some stuff in there that was very wet that shook out. Are we on the beginning of that or the end? I don't know. I hope we're at the beginning of something, because it wasn't there just a few weeks ago.
And you were putting on OAE strips with Keith today, is that right?
Yes. We went ahead and gave them an oxalic blast, or vapor blast too, just to kind of give them a boost.
So did you make your strips? Did you get the Viroxan? Yeah.
I made them. Yeah.
I've been doing the same this time of the year, doing the same thing. Pretty much done with that except for 1 yard. Are you done with your application of those?
I'm going to, at least I say I am. Now, I was going to do dribble in the spring, and I never got around to doing it. So when I say I'm going to do this, I'm not guaranteeing it, but I still have plans in August for these 2 yards or 3 yards we were at today. I do want to do a oxalic every 4 days for like 5 times over, but that's going to be over into August. This
That's going to have a large gasoline expense going out there multiple times.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can keep the peace and keep the price down a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that's where I'm leaning. The main reason I like the extended release is that I don't have to go every 4 days. It can kind of do a little work along the way.
Yeah.
And I did it last year, and it seemed to do okay.
Okay. How about you, Todd? What do you got going on?
Thistle is popping right now, so I just have to keep an eye on things, make sure they have enough room. It's getting into the hot season, so I'll probably be putting strips on. Let's see, what is it? Middle of June. Probably in about 3 weeks, I'll be putting, around July 1st, 2 weeks. I'll leave those on until the middle of August. Then I'll give it about 3 weeks of nothing on there, and then when the temps are right, I'm going to put my APICard on for the rest of the year, and I'm done with that. That's about it. I have another yard, so 4th of July weekend, I need to go check and see if the queens the queens should be back now mated, but I'm going to give them a little break. What I did was, Brian, we were talking earlier about my order from Eddie. Well, I don't want to bore everybody about it, but the shipper really screwed up, and it happens to be the same shipper that Mr. Rawls is dealing with. I'll let him talk about that shipper's name. But I got my queens from Eddie 30 hours later than they were supposed to be. And they took a kind of a wild trip. They went up into Wisconsin, then they swung down into Chicago area, and then they went back to Louisville before coming here. So, and when they left for Wisconsin, they left Louisville. So they did kind of this little circle trip. But anyway, the new yard that I have, I was wanting to put those queens in those queenless colonies that I made up, but those queens failed. Right? They all died off. Fortunately, I put all of the Latshaw brood in all of those 12 boxes, and I had some brood in there or some frames in there that had eggs. So every one of them as a backup plan, because you never know what's going to happen in shipping. And I'm glad I thought of this. My backup, my plan B, so to speak, was to make sure all of those colonies had some eggs to choose from if this didn't work, and it didn't work. So there you go. I had to thin down the Latshaw queens that I got in February because they blew up. They exploded, and I was going to lose them to swarming if I didn't do something. So, so I used some eggs and put them in those colonies, and they made queens or queen cells. And I knocked down all the cells except for 2. I should have done 1, but I did 2. And so everybody had two cells, and that was June, the first weekend in June. It was June 5th. So they've hatched by now, I think, but I won't know for 2 more weeks. But that's all I'm doing right now. So
thanks, Todd. You know, one of the things I love about these chats is how there's a totally different conversation going on in the comment section. They've been talking about cement hives over there, and I think it started as, I don't know if it started out as a joke or not, but there is a guy on Instagram. It's called the Stone Apiary. I think he's out of England, I think he does a lot of cutouts from like the brick buildings there all the time. So he started building some sort of cement because of the insulative properties, I believe, like
Wow.
cement beehives, right? So if you have Instagram and you're interested in that kind of thing, check it out. It's called the Stone Apiary.
Cool. I'll have to look at that. So Todd, you early on you were getting a lot of honey. Did you end up getting a whole lot?
Yeah, I got I ended up with like 7 buckets. It was orange, but this year the orange was darker, and I think what they did was, well, some years they will hit the peach and the plum trees because those go first before oranges, and then it's all orange. But there's also persimmon out at that farm. So I think this year they caught enough of that persimmon to make a color difference. It still tastes, it's still sweet like regular orange, but it's darker. But yeah, I made like 7 buckets, or I got 7 buckets.
So what are you doing? What are you doing with your honey?
I've been doing a lot of local events, not farmers markets, but like neighborhood events. And then funny thing happened a while back. I was getting my hair cut, and the lady that does my hair, she says, "Hey, did you bring me any honey?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I brought some," and I gave it to her. And she said, "You know what? I got a shelf over there. Let's put some of your honey up there, and let the people that come in, let my customers come in. If they see it and buy it, then we do that." So I have my little QR code for Venmo, and yeah, this is working out great. So I've got a couple of different avenues of what I'm doing. I'm moving it pretty good. I'm not moving the creamed honey as much as I want to because it's getting warm, and cream honey doesn't do good in the warm weather, and you really have to sample it for them to buy it. Once they try it, they'll buy it. Right. So I still have some cinnamon and lemon and apple pie spice, but
so during the summer, I focus more on the infused honeys than the creamed honeys, but I still have creamed honeys. And it's been pretty good so far. But this Saturday is the first Saturday where I'm not going to put any out on the table. I'm going to have a sign in its place, though, saying the creamed honey's available in the cooler. And I'll have the list of what we have. And then at the tasting station, I'll have the taster, but it'll be in the cooler as well. So I'll still have them there, and they'll still be available, but I'll lean into the infused honeys more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there was one event I did 3 weekends ago, and it was hot, and I just kept all of it in the ice chest. I didn't even think about bringing it out. Yeah, because it really does a number on creamed honey.
Yeah, it sure can, and it can ruin it. And yeah.
I think also if they taste it, if your sample is kind of like runny honey, they're not going to buy it. It's not even a spread at that point. It's just more like thick honey,
Yeah. So and here's the other thing. Here's the other thing I've noticed. If you try to bring a honey that's not quite set, that's close, but maybe needs another couple of days, those are the ones that are going to do terrible on those hot days. Don't bring those. I've got blueberry. I've got a blueberry and lemon sitting in my fridge, and I pulled a case of each out, and the lemon is ready, so I'll bring that. But I'm not even going to bother with the blueberry because I can tell. You pour it on the side and it's still moving. So I'm like, it's just going to be next week.
Now I have vanilla and hot honey. And there was a gentleman on the chat earlier. I don't think he's here now. He's probably asleep. But he helped me out with the recipe and of both of those. And like those things fly. I can't keep them. I mean, they're gone as soon as I make them. They're basically bought as I bottle them. It's crazy. A lot of people text me, do you have any vanilla? Do you have any hot honey? Blah, blah, blah. You know, and it's coming up.
I've actually thought of, Philip, I thought of stealing from you this year because I'm anticipating a not great harvest. I thought about going to smaller jars to make it last longer. But I'll wait and see what the harvest looks like before I make any big decisions on that.
Yeah, my biggest thing I'm worried about more than anything is, although I don't sell a whole lot of candles and accessories, so to speak. Man, when we get close to Christmas, that's going to be a big deal if I don't have any honey to do samplers and gift sets, because those become half or better of the income at that time of year.
Yeah, I know that one.
So yeah, when you're out of honey, you're out of honey. For those kind of things. And I hate to just show up in December with these tiny little jars and candles and trinkets and, oh, where have you been? Well, I really didn't have any money to sell, but I really want to sell you all this this high markup accessories that I have.
Well, Philip, it's 10 o'clock here in Colorado. Are you in the same time zone as me?
No, it's okay. 11 o'clock here. Yeah.
Gotcha. I want to honor those people on the East Coast who have hung in with us. We still have 35 people with us, so thanks for hanging in. I hope you enjoyed this chat. I certainly learned a lot about the Texas property valuation system. I know there's not many people in Texas that are listening, but maybe you were able to pull something from this conversation back to where you are that you can apply back to your experience. This is kind of the theme that Todd and I have really kind of landed on. It's highlighting different businesses and different business models and different business people in the beekeeping industry and having kind of in-depth conversations. Heck, we posted the link before we even started this chat and forgot to invite people in because we've, again, had such a great conversation with our guest for the evening. So I've really enjoyed this conversation. Philip, it's been great to see you. We don't get to see each other as much as we really need to, even on a screen like this. I know you've been busy recently with life and family and stuff like that. So
yeah, well, I admitted to Brian today that the other Brian, I'm not Brian, Keith, that my consumption of YouTube videos and participation in the chats is somewhat directly related to how my year's going, because I know we shouldn't be jealous people, but I just really don't want to watch other people harvest a lot of honey right now. It just doesn't get me in a good mood.
Yeah, I can understand that one. I've had a year now. I totally get it. It's like every single drop matters. And last year I harvested 3,000 pounds, and I'd say I probably got complacent with how good life was, and now I'm like every drop is a gift. So it's definitely put it into perspective for sure. All right, Todd, we got July coming up. Have you
July
looked at the calendar?
2nd?
July 2nd. Ooh, that's a Thursday. I'm good for that date actually.
Well, I'm good too.
Cool. Right on. Yep. So we'll see you folks in a couple of weeks, right before the July 4th holidays. That'll be nice. That should be right around. Typically, that's around when my flow ends here in Colorado. So we'll see how this year's anomalous weather impacts that. It'll also be post-solstice. Happy solstice, everybody. Yeah. We are super close to that really important landmark in the beekeeper calendar. We'll be on the other side of it. Yeah. Yeah. All right, everyone. So have a great night. Philip, thanks for coming in. Great to see you. Yeah, Todd, great to see you as always.
Yep. Nice to see you too, Brian. And then I guess until next time then, huh?
Yep. Have a good night. Oh, wait, Philip, you are officially an honorary what West Coast Bee
Oh.
Daddy.
All right. Honey Daddy, yeah.
Honey Daddy. There you go.
Well, that was worth staying up. That was worth staying up for, because I have to admit that I have full intentions
I wrote that down somewhere.
of watching you guys show every time you come on, and I usually do catch the first 15 minutes of it, but I crawl in bed and get it started, and then I just go. I wake up and it's over in the middle of the night.
Me too.
Here
Phillip.
it is. Here's what he said way back when. It was he said the title of the show should be Late Night Bee Love with West Coast Honey Daddies.
Oh gosh, that was good. I must have had a drink or something. I've forgotten that. Well,
Yeah,
I should write these things down.
And that's, Phillip, a great example of why I liked you almost immediately. That kind of sense of humor. I was like, I like this guy. All right. And with that, folks, have a great night.
Good
See you in
night.
a couple of weeks.
Good night.
Oh, he signed off again. Hey, he signed off and we're still live, Phillip. Okay, let's
Well, that was the best. You ended that one the best. That was awesome. I had even forgotten saying that.
Did he leave? What?
I guess
did it
There
again.
he is.
I
Hey,
hit the red
it's
button.
the red button up at the top.
you hit the